Okay, so we're gonna go into a garage talk. I think from this point on, if I get out of my main theme of building on my homestead, and I'm frustrated, we're gonna call it a garage talk. But there's two words that I think that actually soften the emotion and are woke. I think woke is creeping into the English language, and I'll give you an example. It's going to be, both of them are going to be kind of a long way around the barn, but going back to my heritage, my grandparent, I'll be talking about my grandmother and my mother. So it's always been in the past that this is a can of soup. Now, I don't know if you can distinguish the size, but the can of soup, or the size of the can of soup, didn't change. So my grandmother, this is actually chili, but I just brought the can for the example. My grandmother went to the store, and back in my grandmother's day, she would say, she'd go to the store and say this can of soup used to be 25 cents. And if they went up to 27 cents, my grandmother would come back from the store and she'd be mad. She'd be visible mad because can of soup stayed the same. It was a constant, the size of the soup. And she'd be visible mad, and she'd come back and she'd be all frustrated. We'd be helping her unload the truck. Actually, I think at the time she had a car, my grandmother and grandfather, they had a car, International Scout, and they called Rosie. The name of the car was Rosie. We'd be unloading Rosie, me and a bunch of cousins. And I remember I'm the oldest cousin for them. Wouldn't be their cousins, would have been grandkids, but anyway, the oldest grandkid for them. But she'd come back with this can of soup and she'd be mad. And she'd unload and she'd say to me and all the grandkids, I'm not doing that again. They're not playing that game. I've had enough, I'm not doing it. Price of the soup had gone up 2 cents, and next time she'd go shopping, she'd come back, wouldn't have this can of soup, wouldn't have a can of soup. This is just for illustration purposes. She'd have a whole bag of beans. She'd have a bunch of beans and a bunch of flour, and she'd say when she came back from that drill, now she might have a bunch of baby chicks in that Rosie, in that car, and be a bunch of baby chicks. I'd be totally confused because she went grocery shopping. She'd come back with a bunch of beans, a bunch of baby chicks, a bunch of flour, a bunch of sugar, big bags, 25-pound bags. And I thought, well, she went grocery shopping. She'd say, take those chicks out to the barn and grow those chicks. And I said, well, what happened to the can of soup? And Grandma would say, I've had enough of that. I'm not doing that no more. Grow those chicks. When it's time for chicken soup, we'll clop the head off one of those chickens. We'll throw them in that flour with some of those beans. We're making our own stuff. Now remember, the price of the can had gone up 2 cents. 2 cents. But it was the same size can. And Grandma, we'd pack Grandma's stuff in, Now we're packing 25-pound bags of stuff instead of cases of soup. And so she'd just make it herself. And she'd say to me, well, those fellas don't know, but I can make my own soup. And she'd actually say, I can make my own damn soup. So the other day, I did a video, and this is where the woke nation has creeped into the English language. I did a video and said, hey, I went and bought a case of soup, and this is the size of soup. This is quite a bit smaller. You can see this is quite a bit smaller. And someone left on the comments, and they said, well, that's shrinkflation. Well, first of all, I didn't even know what the friggin' word meant. And in my day, in my grandmother's day, it would be, you're paying more. They're stealing from you. You're getting less. And what they're doing is they're hiding inflation. Inflation is another word that they use. They're hiding the price that it costs to live. So I think that shrinkflation, now it's not as strong a word as what I would use or my grandmother would use. My grandmother would just come back and say, those damn guys are stealing from me, I'm not doing that anymore. And so they hide it under the magic word or a new word that's softened. Oh, it's just shrinkflation. You can accept that, it's shrinkflation. You get to buy this for the same price as this. It's no big deal. Well, yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to me. It was a big deal to my mother, a big deal to my grandmother, that Hey, I can't make it. This can of soup, probably I could make that for a lunch break. I need 2 of these cans of soup to make it for a lunch break. That is a serious condition, and they just masked it with the word shrinkflation. Now, when the lady said it, I replied to the lady, and she thought I was mad. I'm not mad at the person that put the comment. I'm mad that they're masking, they're hiding the fact that it cost us more to buy groceries. That was one of the words that I got, and that's how my mother and my grandmother would have dealt with it. Stop buying friggin' cans of soup that cost too much, and start buying beans and making your own soup. And that's just a package. I just use that for example. The other one I got the other day, now I was looking at a news broadcast. They call themselves a news broadcast. I was looking at them and they said, well, now we're going to give you an example of gaslighting. That's another woke word. Shrinkflation is a woke word, and gaslighting is another woke word. So they pan over to a lady. She gave her point of view. They panned back and they said something like, that's a example of gaslighting. For me and my generation or my family, that lady was out and out lying. Why we don't call a liar anymore, why we have to use a softened down word that doesn't mean what she's actually doing, I have no idea in the nation. I have no idea why that is. But she was actually just bull-faced lying. And whatever is going to recourse she's going to get for that, she's going to get for that. But when we start getting back to they're lying and you start calling them out, because remember, in my lifetime, if a news broadcaster won on this station and was lying, somebody went and fact-checked him, and once they found out that he was lying, that fella didn't have a job anymore. There was a case that happened, I don't remember the name of the guy. The guy was out of Canada. He was a big-time newscaster, been in the industry for years and years and years, and he was lying. They caught him lying. That was his last day. Now we just use the term, well, they're gaslighting. It's okay. It's not that big a deal. When you go back to calling a liar or spade a spade, then we get back back to the road to success and start achieving. And once we start finding out, well, all these people are lying, which we know now that after the debate everybody's lying to us, but once we start, they have recourse for lying on the national TV, and they don't have a job, and we actually start putting honest people back in those jobs, then we're on the path to success.
My audience for this video